Hi, my name is Naomi Sumthin2Say Johnson. That's my formal name. And I am a creative from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I am a Texas transplant. I moved here in 2015 with my now husband, Anthony. And this is my story. So I've been a creative since I can remember. And I've done all things from acting, singing, writing, dreaming, anything creative, I've done it. And I once had, I don't want to say it was an altercation, but I had a difference of opinion. When I first came to Texas, I have never lived in the South. I am the granddaughter of sharecroppers, and I grew up in the North. My family hails from Kosciuszko, Mississippi, and Walnut Grove, Mississippi. Walnut Grove, Mississippi is where my maternal grandparents met and married. And then they took part in the Great Migration, which a lot of African Americans took a part of, and headed north for safety, economic security, and a better life. I am the oldest of three girls. My mother, who is an Army veteran, was a single mother, and her mother had 11 children. My mom was the last baby girl of those 11 children, and this is how my story starts. This poem that I wrote back in 2018 touches on a lot of my story. Some of my best poetry I've given away. Some of the best stories I've received tucked deep inside, hoping these words over time will become ingrained in my DNA, inherited by my legacy. Like my mother's gift of writing, like the intelligent, quick witted, and wise tongue of my grandmother's delivery. I have shelves of these stories in my memory, tear stained, blood washed, wrinkled pages, glistening in black folk magic, and chicken scratch sentences. I once wrote letters to a family member who served a long sentence, spent many summers writing fantastic stories in childhood, read Judy Blume's book Iggy's House repeatedly, found the subject of the fictional characters to be my lifelong realty. That my blackness has been problematic since birth. My love for poetic stories ignited by my Mexican neighbor Maria. We share frozen Kool-Aid cups and Shel Silverstein in adolescence, daydreaming often my release from thoughts of hot summer squabbles turned late night shootouts under the lights of the street. I've always wanted a treehouse for my sanctuary, but you can't build those in the projects. The highest honor under God goes to my grandparents, who raised a family of 11 in the projects of Milwaukee. Grandpa used to sing me songs from the country of crying babies to softly antagonize my tears into laughter. He died before the end of the 80s, but encouraged my love for bananas, which was uncanny because I hated them. He shared them from his sickbed, so I knew that he loved me. Grandma taught me how to sew, cook, and crochet. These times gave way to tales of Walnut Grove, Mississippi, the first state I successfully learned to spell, but a land that I had yet to see. The settings painted vividly with reminiscent laughter. The youth in her eyes glimmered, the gold tooth in her mouth shimmered. This sealed the deal for me. In my maturity, I've discovered the importance of the story. Practice unique methods of sharing the blessings of my black girl humanity, found in the magic of friendship, of life and death with Charlotte the Spider. I have also spun webs with Anansi, musically slayed Abiyoyo, consoled and sold buttons on corduroy, and carried my brown bear in department stores where my brown didn't always feel welcome. Cowered at the rolls of thunders and begged for them to hear my cry, spoke life into my soul in the face of schoolhouse integration, reminding myself that warriors don't cry. Learned kindness and humility from Mufaro's most beautiful daughters, found familiarity in the tongue of my ancestors by simply learning that Jambo means hello. I proudly hold the language of that my legacy didn't start with slavery, it deepened and undocumented. But you can find maps in my makeup sans makeup. You'll find this in the warm tone of my complexion's conversation. Hear the talking drums and welcoming chants in my laughter. These stories are strapped to my back like books. They keep me sturdy. I have eaten at many a table where soul food was served, seasoned with the love-filled language. Stories passed around the table like necessary condiments, sought after like my auntie's dressing. lingering like that savory flavor. Cautionary sentiments imparted while my mama parted and dressed my hair on Saturday nights, only to be shiny and presentable for Sunday morning worship. Secretly looking forward to my Auntie Pat's crown of choice, her hats were always fit for a queen, sitting in quiet uniformity, listening to hear stories inspired by God. Heaven sent messages that needed no alteration. My last patriarch, Uncle Willie, was a tailor. Owned the first business in my family that I could remember. I love to stop by his home and leave with a missing family history and way back stories. I resound this word stories, plural. A single black experience multiplied to be transported in forthcoming generations. Our history is gradually being rewritten for comfort, so I'll let them have their version and continue to sit at the feet of the elders and push forward these legacies, these ugly cross burnings, midnight invasions, sun-rotted strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees, and alligator bait. These stories, unpopular and not so comfortable, I brandish boldly to build awareness of why black stories matter. Driving home the understanding that though the black experience has been bitter, it is the resilience to carry on our traditions and stories that is sweet. Sweet like my last matriarch's favorite and famous baked confections. My Auntie Ruthie was known in the 1960s for preparing cakes in the upscale Milwaukee downtown hotels, solely for Caucasian consumption, but was neglected to be invited to the table. I was the first person in my family to be invited to the White House and to feast at President Obama's second inauguration celebration. Surprisingly, this was missed because I couldn't afford the trip. Was barely making ends meet while taking part in history. This story still gets to me. And there's more that where that came from. So I collected them in this poem and I'm giving it away, while keeping remnants of their lacquer tucked away deep inside, hoping that these words over time will become ingrained in my DNA and inherited by my legacy. Again, I keep saying that word, legacy. I'm working on a one-woman show called South by Midwest. South by Midwest is a one-woman play and book that I'm currently working on, and it encapsulates my entire life. I'm only 36, but I like to joke around and say that I've lived 1,000 lives. But I also come from a legacy of people that are tenacious, that are faith-filled, and that have done extraordinary things. South by Midwest. A sharecropper's granddaughter born in the North returns to the South. You don't have any culture. This is what was told to me by my Mexican supervisor at a former call center only after 2 months of living in the South. This was my greatest fear realized. I had encountered racism, although with a different face and an unfamiliar accent. I was confronted by him in the workplace for wearing my traditional African American head wrap. The moment ending with him defiantly stating, "You can't wear that just because you're black." All of my adult life, I had to reconsider the presentation of my blackness in spaces that are integrated. In this moment, I fought back tears because I do have culture, but many fail to respect and recognize it. I come from a proud and resilient people. I come from a city that is aware of its contributions as black people coming from the racist Jim Crow South. So this is a picture of one of the meeting halls in my hometown. It's called the Wisconsin Black Historical Society. Milwaukee is a majority black city. Because of the reverse Great Migration, which is something I took a part in, my grandparents and their families came in the Great Migration, which took place between the 1940s going into the 1970s, where people of black and African descent came from the South to the northern cities and states for a better life, economical stability, and better living. This is my grandfather's father. This is my maternal grandfather's father, Anderson Ricks. He was born in 1872. This is the only picture that we have of my great-grandfather on my grandfather's side. He married my great-grandmother, Cora Ward. She was born in 1875. This is one of the oldest pictures that I have of my mom's grandmother and her grandfather, which would be my great grandparents. This picture was taken in the 1930s. Picture right is my great grandfather, Arthur Jack Johnson Sr., which we affectionately call Daddy Jack. Daddy Jack, his father, was a member of a pygmy tribe. He was enslaved and captured, and when he was brought to the Americas, he was separated from his family. So Daddy Jack never knew any of his siblings. And to the left, his lovely bride, Miss Addie Mae Lewis Johnson. She was born April 8th of 1900. Daddy Jack was born in 1896. So it's always easy for me to remember how old Addie Mama was. That's what we called her, Addie Mama. It's always easy to remember her birthday because I just did my simple math as a kid. I love that I had a relationship with her for the short time that I did up until her death in 1993. And these are their children. This is my grandmother. This is my grandmother. This is her baby sister. My grandmother right here is the oldest, and these are her baby sisters. This is the baby. We call her Aunt Ann. And this was taken July 6, 1932 in Walnut Grove, Mississippi. And these are their parents. This is the older picture of Addie Mama and Daddy Jack. And this was at their 50th wedding anniversary, circa 1973. These are my grandparents. I miss them so much. This is my grandmother, Luberta, and her husband, Edgar West Sr. They were married in the 1940s. They came to Milwaukee in the mid-1940s. So about 1945, they came up to Milwaukee. And this is my mom, Cynthia Denise Briggs. She's historical in her own right because in the 1970s, she was of the first class of women, not only just being a young black woman, but a group of women that were integrated into one of the longest running all boys schools. And this school was so exclusive, you had to test to get in it. So my mom was the first class of young women to integrate and graduate in 1980. My mom was or is a veteran. She served proudly in the United States Army Reserve from September 15th of 91 to September 11th of 2002. And this is me. Cute, right? I am the oldest child of 3 girls. I was born February 9th, 1984. My mom named me Naomi Kenya after a very popular play. In 1979, the name of the play was called For Colored Girls Who Considered Suicide When the Rainbow Was Enough. Very popular play during that time. It was written by the late playwright Ntozake Shange. And my mom saw the play in high school, and she picked my name then, way before I was born. And she was always reminding me that my name, it was beautiful because it meant quiet place. And this is us. I'm going to get in trouble for this picture, but I love it because we were so happy. This is one of my favorite pictures when it comes to my legacy and to my family story. This is me. I was about 2 years old. This is my mom, who's the baby of all of her siblings, all of her sisters. There's 5 girls. This is my eldest aunt, Ruthie. This is my grandmother, Luberta. And this is my great-grandmother, Addie Mae, also known as Addie Mama. And this is me. I'm wearing red. I didn't plan this. I promise I didn't plan this. Told y'all, red has been a long-standing color of mine. But this is my very first performance outside of my family church. And I was in kindergarten. And I sang this song that I learned in kindergarten in front of the whole school. And when I did the dress rehearsal, I ran off stage. I was so scared. And I went and talked to my kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Reiner. And then I also told my mom what happened on the walk home from school. And I told my Addie mama what happened. And she taught me how to be courageous. She taught me how to be brave. And she taught me how to sing loud and be proud of myself. So I got a standing ovation that night. And I've been on stages ever since. And this is one of the last gatherings we had with Addie Mama. That is my grandmother, Luberta. That's my aunt, Ruthie. This is Addie Mama. And these are my two cousins. They're older than me. It's my cousin, Charlene, and my cousin, Clarice. We also call her Reese. I have been using my voice and my platform for a very long time. This picture was taken about 2002 in Milwaukee on a morning news show called Real Milwaukee. And I was there to advocate for the African American dancing style called Chicago style stepping. So everywhere I go, I try to make sure that I'm representing my culture well and just being unapologetic about who I am. And this is the love of my life, Anthony. We met in the summer of 2005, and we started dating in 2009, and we got married in the summer of 2017, 7/7/17. Fun story about this picture, it was not planned. We had our wedding reception in a park that was around the corner from his mother's house, and this ice cream truck just showed up, and it happened to be red. Same as our wedding colors. This is one of the proudest moments that I have to date. I was featured in a Smithsonian Institute exhibit at the Institute for Texan Cultures for an exhibit called The Will to Adorn. And it's all about the African American aesthetic, why we dress the way that we do, and what does that mean to us culturally. How do we have pride in ourselves as African American people? How are we unapologetic in our spaces? And I was very proud of my husband because a piece of his shoe collection was featured in an exhibit next to head wraps that I have collected and handmade myself. During this program, I was also teaching students how I handcrafted head wraps and even brought my sewing machine in to show them how I take my time to make these things. My mom even came down for the exhibit, which was my proudest moment because I had realized over time that all the sacrifices that had been made for me, for the people that came before me, was being put on display because I had pride from where I came. I was the first person in my lineage to tell this story in this magnitude. The sacrifices of my lineage does not begin with the kidnapping and enslavement of my ancestors. It has been my duty and delight to bear the torch on the path that has been laid. I have so much further to go. My culture is abundant, and I share this legacy with the pride that it's due. My grandparents were sharecroppers, and I am the manifestation of them. Last but not least, I started and founded the San Antonio Kwanzaa Coalition in December of 2019. I found that it was so important for us to have a representation of Black culture in the city of San Antonio. Kwanzaa is a holiday that was started in 1966 by Dr. Maulana Karenga to give us a harvest celebration in the Americas and across the African diaspora. I'm so proud to head this organization and to contribute, highlight, and observe Black culture in San Antonio and abroad. This is my story. Thank you for listening. Asante Sana. That's Swahili for thank you.